Welcome back to Layer Academy. In this video, we're going to be continuing on our series on cashier and billing. Let's take a look at what we currently have. If we click Pay with Card, you'll see we get the Stripe information here, card number, expiry, and CVV. We are also still in test mode. If we take a look at Stripe and try to change to live, you'll see that I have not activated my account yet. So Stripe will continue to let us use test mode until we're ready. There are quite a few things I want to do in this video. I want to start off by creating some default users and then move on to subscriptions. So let's go ahead and let's load up Sublime. In Sublime, let's load up our routes.php. And at the bottom, what we're going to do is we're going to add a new route group. And we're going to make sure that anything that comes in with /subscription is going to fall within this group. So we'll give it a prefix of subscription. And to keep our code nice and clean, let's also give it a namespace of subscription. And we'll make sure that we have our routes for our subscriptions in here. So we'll start off with the first route, which is just a get, and it's just going to control the index page for us. So we'll use named routes, and this will make it easier when we're doing our HTML. And we're going to say it uses the subscription controller at index. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make this namespace. So in controllers, we'll make a new folder called subscription. And then let's make a new subscription controller. So I'll make a new file and call it subscriptioncontroller.php. And the method that we're going to have is index. Now it might be easier to use PHP Artisan to do this, but let's just import some of the code. So we have to give it a namespace, and we are in app HTTP controllers, and then the thing to remember is we are also in subscription. So once we have the namespace, let's import the default Laravel use statements. So we'll make sure that we have the app HTTP requests. And next we're going to have the controller. And finally we'll have illuminate HTTP request. And now we can start with our controller. So we'll call this subscription controller. And it extends the controller itself. So like I said, it's probably easier to use PHP Artisan to make a controller. But now that we have our basic structure, let's go ahead and start adding some methods. We'll have the construct method, and in here we'll add any middleware that we need later on. So middleware can be things like if the user is an admin or if they need to be logged in. We'll go ahead and we'll create this index function. And in here, let's just return a view for this specific function. So we'll return a view of subscription.index. And because this subscription view hasn't been created yet, we're going to have to go in to our resources and then inside view and make a new folder. And we just need to name this subscription. And in subscription, we need to make a new file, and we'll call this index.blade.php. Now that we have this blade file, let's go ahead and start adding some HTML. We want to extend a layout file, so we'll say layout.app, and let's have a section for our content. Now let's make sure we've saved all our files first, and back in our index, because we are extending layout.app, we need to make a new folder in their views called layout, and then a new file called app.blade.php. And what I'll do is I'll just copy some of this code from the welcome file, paste it in, and remove pretty much everything here. We'll give it a title, we'll say Stripe demo, and the next thing we want to do is just yield the content. With the framework of our HTML set out, let's go ahead and let's add the Bootstrap Css, and we'll give this a comment. And the final thing we'll need at the bottom is the Bootstrap JavaScript. And once we finish adding in the Bootstrap here, let's save our layout, go over to our index, and add some boilerplate in here. So we'll have a container, a row, then just a full column, and we'll give it a header for subscription demo. Let's save this and let's head on over to Chrome and let's try out the route. We'll say public subscriptions, and nope, my mistake, it is subscription. So this route is working. So let's go ahead and start adding some of the code here. So the end goal is to display a button for any user that is not logged in to log in as a random user, and when they are logged in, display a button where they can log out. So adding some more boilerplate for Bootstrap here, let's add an if statement to see if the user is logged in. Otherwise, let's just go ahead and display an alert here. So let's style this alert with an alert danger. Let's add some text to say you are not logged in, and let's remind them to run the migrations if they haven't done so, and then click the button below. So let's go ahead and add a button here. We'll just have a button default, and we won't have a link in here for now. We'll just say login as random user. So let's give this a save, and let's switch back to Chrome and give it a refresh to make sure that this is actually running correctly. See, we have an alert and our button. So now that we've actually coded the not logged in part, let's just code a little message to say that you are logged in as, and let's pass in the user that's currently logged in. So we'll use auth user, and let's give it the email address. So with that done, let's go ahead and save this file, and let's get our database up and running. By default, Laravel will come with 2 migrations, a create users and a password reset. But for now, let's open up our env and assign the correct variables to get our database connection running. So I'll be using the database Cashier. I'll give it a username and password. Now with that information saved, I'm going to load up my SSH connection into my server here. And now I'm going to log into MySQL, and I'm going to create a database called Cashier. Just remember that this has to match what we put in. Now let's exit MySQL, and we can run php artisan migrate, and this will create the 2 tables for us. The next task that we want to accomplish is using the database seeder and the model factory that comes by default in Laravel to create 50 random users. So what we'll do is we'll use php artisan make seed, and we'll pass it the file name as user seeder. Seeding the database allows us to create a number of different records on any table that we define. It's great for making random data and test data. But for now, let's go ahead and open our new userseeder.php as well as the database seeder. Let's change the call so we're not calling user table seeder, but we'll just call it user seeder. Now switch over to our user seeder, and what we're going to be using is we're going to be using the factory method. We'll pass in the class app user, and we want to create 50 users. So again, we're using the factory for app user, which is defined in our model factory, and we're going to create 50 users. Now with these files saved, let's head back to our console. Let's run php artisan migrate. We'll pass in the optional parameter for refresh, and we'll say seed. Refresh will go through and make sure that it rolls back any tables that it needs to, and the seed option will run any seeders that are defined in the database seeder. We can check now that everything's been completed by using php artisan tinker, and what we'll do is we'll just grab all the users that are in that table to verify that the data is in there. And you can see that it is, all the way down to the ID of 50. So we're getting close to the end, so let's switch back to the subscription controller, and let's create the couple of methods that are still outstanding. So we will go ahead and create a function for login. So this will log in the user. And what we'll do is we will just use auth to log in a random user. So we'll say the auth facade, login using ID, and we'll pass in a random ID or a random integer between 1 and 50. And once we're logged in, let's redirect back to the index. So let's go ahead and use our redirect. So at the bottom of login, we could say return, redirect, route, and we're going to use the subscription index as the route. So we'll paste that in, and underneath here, let's go ahead and make a logout method. This method is fairly simple. We'll just make sure that we log the user out, and then we'll return to a route subscription index. Let's also use auth so we don't have to have a slash in front of it. And now the final thing we have to do here is make sure that we have these 2 routes in our group here. So I'll just copy our first one and paste them in. So we'll say get login, we'll go reference as subscriptions login, and we'll use the login function. And logout we'll change the name to Logout and use the Logout function as well. Finally, let's copy these routes and let's go and add them into our links. So for our login, we'll have a URL route for subscriptions login. And let's also make a link where we can log the user out. So we'll also have a URL route and we'll say subscriptions logout. Now switching over to Chrome, we should be able to log in and log out, and we will continue getting random users as we log in. In the next video, we'll be taking a look at how we can use Stripe to subscribe a user to a plan, as well as how we can allow the user to update their card, cancel their subscription, or resume their subscription as long as they're on their grace period. Thanks for watching.